What if the world lost its mightiest heroes is the question we're asking ourselves today on Fake Nerds Watch, Episode 3. What's up? I'm Ryan Leopoulos, and that's how I remember the title, because I immediately just heard about it. That's Sparks Witty, that's Brandon T. McClure, and that's Ben Magnet. We're here to talk about things and stuffs, and what if things didn't go as planned.
I made a terrible mistake of not really looking at what you were doing before we started.
Yeah.
So you started and I looked and then it's like, oh, Tony's got a big growth and it's Ryan Leopoulos.
Yes, it's me. I am the growth of Tony Stark. What's up? Hey guys, what if all the heroes went bye-bye? What would happen? And that's what we found out in this wonderful episode of What If. What'd you guys think about it?
I really like this episode.
Mm-hmm. Benjamin.
I also enjoyed it. I still feel like this episode kind of is like, hey, it takes the question of what if and how things would be different, and a little bit more than the very first episode. It doesn't take it in the scale of the episode 2, where that one really went leaps and bounds to say, hey, how things might be different. But this one was still like, yeah, I can still see this as being a good what if, a good one shot. Which
yes, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I didn't like it as much as episode 2. This is definitely in the better ground of what I want a what if to be. Not too much like the original thing, but you can still keep it close enough if you want to tell this a slightly different story. And I thought the changes were fun and it made sense. And like, I didn't feel like I was just watching those old movies again. It actually felt additive and stuff.
Yeah, if this is closer to the floor going forward, I'll be happier. And like the first episode can just be the basement that we don't go back to.
Absolutely, yeah. Right. That's our first apartment. We just never look back. We've moved on.
Like as of right now, episode 2 is like the penthouse suite. This one is like the ground floor lobby. Very nice, still fun to go to. And episode 1 is like we don't go in the basement.
You know, for me, honestly, I don't think episode 2 and 3 are that far apart in quality. 3 is obviously the better episode. I really enjoyed this episode. One of the things that I noticed was fun is we get the nexus point, as to use the Loki terminology of Loki. We get the nexus point in the beginning of What If episode 2 of what that was going to be. Where that divergent timeline starts. And then we see the repercussions of it afterwards. But in this one, we don't know what the nexus point is going into this episode. And we don't find out until towards the end of the episode, but we see the repercussions as they go. And I think that's a lot of fun. I like that they're playing with the formula a bit.
It was like a murder mystery.
I got hung up. Did you mean to say that obviously the third episode is the better one?
Oh, I meant the second episode is the better one.
Okay, cool. That's what I was like.
I was gonna say, I mean, both of you.
I apologize.
If that's your opinion, own that opinion, brother. But I was like,
I honestly,
I wouldn't have been so bold to say obviously, but like if that's your opinion, like great.
I meant second. For me right now, it is second. It's 3, and then it's 1.
Yeah,
because 1 is just
there. While it wasn't as egregious as the first episode, there were points where I'm like, well, this is the same. This is the scene from the movie, and like. It was a little bit better, like the scene with the Hulk. Like, you know, it's cool to see Mark Ruffalo take over Edward Norton, so we can just erase him from history, because that's what's happening, I guess. It would have been cool if he shows up. Of all the people to show up again, he's not one of them, which is kind of sad to me. But like, it was still like a less fun Hulk scene from that movie, and it's like Black Widow's there. I'm like, okay, this is cool. Like, I wasn't like loving it because it wasn't doing anything super cool, and Blonsky wasn't there, so like it wasn't as cool as it could have been.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I think the Incredible Hulk sequence just kind of makes me happy because of how much I like that movie, and I've always thought that that they should acknowledge the movie more so than they do. They don't outright say that movie never happened, but they do play with the idea like, yeah, we'll pick and choose what's canon from that movie. But I do like going back to that movie a lot, and then just being like, it was always Mark Ruffalo. I'm kind of okay with that because you're not going to get Edward Norton back.
No, yeah, that's true. Yeah, and I guess
like, it's kind of like the same thing when Don Cheadle replaced Terrence Stamp as Rhodey.
Who?
Terrence Howard.
Terrence Howard. Yeah, that's not Terrence
different.
Terrence Stamp as Rhodey. I need to see now.
You're 40 years older and you're white.
You guys know what I meant. They're both the first name
Terrence.
Yeah, it's
right.
kind
I
of
mean,
like
but Ben's right. If they ever went back to Iron Man, if they ever did a nexus point in Iron Man, if Rhodey showed up, it's Don Cheadle. It's not. Yeah. It's not Terrence Howard.
No, yeah. I'm just lamenting. I just like Edward Norton.
I'm not surprised that it was Mark Ruffalo.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, it felt, I definitely felt a little like, how dare you stand where he stood? Because I'm like, while I can, like, Incredible Hulk is canon and like I accept that and everything, like it's very hard for me to accept like nebbish Bruce Banner that Mark Ruffalo does existing pre-Avengers. Like, I accept that it's something he adapted post the Incredible Hulk events.
Mhm.
I don't love that it's something I don't love that it's something that we're implying has always been who Bruce is, because
I guess
I'm more into Edward Norton's like darker, grislier thing, and he lightened up over time than, like, he was more doom and gloom back then, and like Mark Ruffalo's barely in this, but like he's got that, like, he's still got that way of behaving like Bruce that he's indoctrinated over all this time, which is like more like lighter touch on him. Yeah. And I don't like that implication that that's who Bruce was at the time. And that's why I'm like,
that's why I was somewhat joking, but like,
I would have rather that we didn't hear Bruce in this episode at all.
Yeah.
And we just have the Hulk stuff happen and he bursts out of the thing the same way as in the film. And Black Widow was on the ground with Betty, and we didn't even engage with Bruce. Like, he just all of a sudden he was on the scene, and we just have the Hulk, but we don't touch the Bruce stuff.
Betty showing up was really nice.
Betty was cool.
It's not Liv Tyler, but like I thought the voice actor that they got was pretty close. Like, Liv Tyler has a very like soft voice, and like that actor was doing a Liv Tyler. I'm like, all right, cool.
That Tony actor sounded a lot better in this than he had to me in the trailers.
Yeah, it was really good. It's pretty good.
In that scene in the beginning,
he sounds like the guys that get for like the TV shows and the games. I wonder if it's
he sounded like he had a lot closer to the cadence of Robert Downey Jr. than the trailer had led me to believe.
I agree.
Yeah. I really appreciate that when we roll up in this episode, it's just what happened just before Sam Jackson shows up in Iron Man 2.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm when I saw that, I was like, oh dang, because we talked about it last week, but like I didn't think we'd actually just go hard into this comic book, which I really like this comic book. This is Fury's Big Week, and it's a comic book that a lot of MCU fans and a lot of people won't really know about, because it's a comic book that existed pre-Avengers, and nobody really knows that they tried to do this, and I think it's a really fun deep cut that goes back to what we talked about last week, which is that this show, more so than the other Disney Plus shows, and more so than anything in the MCU, is made for the fans of the MCU. Like, if you've been following the MCU for 10 years, if you're a hardcore fan or even a casual fan of the MCU, this is the show for you and just for you. And I think that's really fun.
Yeah. I agree. I think it's really cute, and it works well for the story they're telling about Fury, like, needing to do all these things kind of like quickly, so that it all has to feel like it has the stakes and pressure at the moment in time. So it works better for these things to happen at the same time. I'm still not a big fan of those movies happening at the same time, but that's me.
It's a lot happening at once.
I still think that's kind of insane for a universe that then later says, and then nothing happens for like 3 years.
Hey man, the New 52, everything happened in the last 5 years. I'm like, oh wow, that's a lot of heroes.
Yeah.
It was the only way. It was back then. It was the only. It made sense to whoever made that decision, and they just stuck with it. But they'd never go back to it anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It just kind of exists as a deep cut in this episode.
Yeah, I like the plot of the episode of it being like a murder mystery, and and this is like the first episode where, because they've been doing a thing where they reveal who the cast is at the beginning, and like for episode 2, that told me Thanos is in the episode, and I figured he would be because it's Guardians, but like it would have been cool to have that surprise when Thanos sits down like, I'm a good guy, right? This episode actually hit a lot of its cameos, and it was really, really great, because like a lot of the actors came back, and especially the villain of the episode.
They didn't pull a Law and Order where you were like, well, I know who the killer is.
Yeah,
there's a special guest star.
Snoop Dogg's on the episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, like the villain being Michael Douglas, Hank Pym. And like, this is the world. Oh, what if he hung out with Cross because something bad happened to Hope, and now that's his trajectory? And I'm like, oh, this is really fun. And he's evil Yellowjack, and I'm like, this is cool. This is unexpected.
The whole time,
go ahead.
The whole time I'm watching this show, I'm like, I see Tony Stark die. I see, because I thought maybe he just got like, he was the what was it?
Poison?
Whatever the antidote was for his thing just was a bad reaction. Maybe this was the universe where someone mixed up the cocktail and just gave him a bad dose. So I'm like, maybe
I'd hate to be that SHIELD agent. Just, oh no.
Yeah. But then, of course, when you see the thunder and you see the arrow go, I'm like, Clint doesn't shoot. And then when you see Clint die, I'm like, who do I know? Like the whole time I watched
Clint's death got me. Like Clint's death.
Yeah.
When Clint died, I was like, what's happening? Who's doing this?
I'm seriously thinking, who do I? Because at first, like when the thunder crack goes, I'm thinking, okay, it's probably Loki. It's Loki who's doing this.
I did too. I was like, this is Loki. Loki's doing this.
Yeah. Then he shows up. I'm like, okay, maybe it's not Loki. And then I'm thinking, who do I know? And then I was like, no, it can't be Scott Lang. How can it be Scott Lang?
Honestly,
no.
the Ant-Man universe didn't enter into my mind until he says Hope. It's all about Hope. I'm like, Hope Van Dyne wouldn't do this.
It did enter into my mind, but only moments beforehand, because Black Widow's looking at the computer and her mom pops up on the files.
I thought it was going to be. And
I'm like, oh, it's going to be a Pym. It's going.
Yeah. I thought it would have been Janet who escaped and found out something bad happened.
We both were thinking that for a second, and then
we weren't too far off. It was just
but I mean, like, but the cool thing is that it is something we couldn't have predicted, which is that Hope was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and she died.
Yeah, and that's where the episode surprised me, because they hit its nexus point. They were like, the nexus point was that Hope became an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and died, and so Hank went crazy. And when Michael Douglas' voice shows up, I'm like, damn, they got Michael Douglas back to do this? Awesome.
I actually didn't think it was Michael Douglas at first. I waited until the full cast list came up and I paused it. I'm like, oh damn, he actually came back to do this. I thought that was really cool.
Definitely.
I Michael Douglas, the reveal, and the yellow jacket being kind of a MCU design version of what he wears in the comics as the yellow jacket, I thought looked really cool.
And the helmet is still reminiscent of like Scott Lang's or the original Ant-Man helmet.
Yeah.
The flashback of seeing like how he killed everyone. Oh, you think people are getting shot, but no, they're getting Ant-Man. That's so cool. Like, it's great.
Banner got shot he got shot with an Ant-Man with a yellow jacket, and they just expanded his insides until he exploded. I thought it was like, what a wild way to kill Bruce Banner.
That guy. I mean, it's Bruce Banner, and when he does explode, they don't show the full explosion. It's just it's just like a green glop. But still, I'm like, man, this is like really dark.
Oh, but
also being like a kid show.
Betty's reaction was really great when she's just on the floor. She's like, he can't die. He can't die. Like that revelation. Like that revelation in her, like she can't process the fact that she just watched Bruce Banner die. I thought was just one of my favorite parts of the episode, where the emotional beats hit.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still bits in the episode where the dialogues, it's fine. Michael Douglas says Goldilocks, like you wouldn't have da. I'm like, okay. There's still some things like that.
Yeah, I think Lake Bell does a really good job as not Scarlett Johansson. She's got like the raspy voice and like the great sarcasm. So like I would like love to see. I know Black Widow's gone, but like if we bring Black Widow back again and again, like Lake Bell's not a bad choice. Like she's pretty good. I like her a lot.
Also, I love
Poison Ivy from Harley Quinn. She's great.
Yeah.
I love Clark Gregg in this episode.
Oh,
like
sure.
When he sees Thor, he's like, Caucasian male with really great hair.
Sir, he's gorgeous.
It's an accurate.
That joke was okay to me. What was funny was Hawkeye going up and being like, wow, Coulson was right. His hair's really great. Even as Jeremy Renner sounded stiff as wood throughout all his lines.
You know what? So far, no one has sounded worse than Sebastian Stan to me.
Oh, that's gonna be hard to top, honestly.
Yeah.
He also had the worst lines.
When the Clark Gregg stuff, some of his fanboy stuff went much further than it ever has, even in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. But it didn't bother me. Some of the jokes landed really well for me. Some of them didn't. None of them really bothered me. But I took issue with the fact that his password, no human being's password is Steve, 0 heart, Steve, whatever.
Yeah,
there was one Steve.
No, there's 4 Steves in that password.
Yeah. There's like 3 or 4 Steves. I heart Steve, and then like 0704, which is the 4th of July.
Yeah, there's no
It's
no
a
one's
lot.
password looks like that.
I mean, I let it pass because again, like this is aimed at a younger audience, so like this show's gonna have more comedy.
Nothing I'm saying about that is detrimental to the episode to me. It was just the only time where I was like, that one's a little too far for me.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what's detrimental to this series.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Ben. You're gonna say a thing. I'll tangent after.
I was gonna say that I also thought it was a nice little callback to when Iron Man 3, when Tony's trying to hack into the system, he's like, "Hey, Rhodey, what's your password?" War Machine Rocks with 2 Z's.
See, that's a password.
Yeah.
So I think something that's maybe detrimental to the whole series, it certainly is, I think, even in episode 2 up to this point, is recycled dialogue. I'm getting real tired of it already.
What do you mean? Don't you remember the movie that you've seen already?
I'm tired of 20% of the dialogue in each episode being lines maybe said differently or by a different person,
usually
or
worse,
in a different context.
And also worse.
From the movies that you've already seen. And I'm like,
sure,
we don't need to do this. I don't know why we're doing this. This is terrible. These are bad callbacks. They're not even joke callbacks. They're just, hey, Loki said this thing when he stood over the people in Avengers. Let's have him say it to Earth. It'll be the exact same lines. And I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Because you know.
Why? Yes, I think that is the problem.
Yeah.
I think it's because the MCU is a thing where everybody's so entrenched and they've marathoned the movies a bunch of times. So yeah, they're going to know when they say those lines. And they're like, man, they're going to be right there with us. They're going to be like, that's the thing he said in Avengers. And I'm like, no, I hate that feeling.
It's why
I don't think you're wrong.
When it happens in the second episode, I'm more lenient on it because it's an entirely fresh story. But when we're rewatching the same thing,
really changed the context.
Yes.
And this was a big problem in one.
Yes.
Because the context didn't change at all.
Yeah.
And then this one,
it's not as bad, but definitely like if the less crazy episodes are still so reliant on like previous dialogue, like I am on the same boat.
I don't mind like a line or two. There's like 10 lines.
Yeah.
That are quotes, like lines that were said in other movies, just said again in similar settings or the exact same one with a twist on it.
Was it William
And I am not
Hurt?
talking about the scene where they are literally doing the moment from Iron Man 2 before Tony dies.
Yeah.
I don't mind that.
That one's
you are
sad,
just
fine.
playing the moment. Mm-hmm. It's the exact same moment. That's fine. That's just revisiting it. I'm talking when they're like,
oh, the Hulk Black Widow moment. I'll get you out of here all my life.
Yes, that.
And then I yelled, "Your life!"
That.
I did too.
Exactly what I'm talking about. That is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, God forbid that they have a different interaction.
Yeah. I don't think you're wrong.
I really hope that stops, but I'm really nervous, at least for this first season. It's not gonna. I think they're going to slam that. And this is a problem in the MCU in general, I think. I think they're a little too into referencing their own shit.
Smelling their own farts.
Few too many callbacks. I'll even get on that. Like this really peaked for me in Falcon and Winter Soldier. I made a note of it. I'm like, this is callback for callback's sake, and it serves the story absolutely not at all. And we've reached that point where it's just happening way too much.
Member berries.
Yeah, and I'm not into it. I really need them to back off the callbacks. There's a few too many.
I got a feeling you're right that this season will probably.
I think it probably will. The fact that it's been so consistent up to this point makes me think like unless we get something that's really. So I'm sure the zombie episode will go really far out.
I was gonna say the zombie one's a wholly original thing, so like I have to unless
all the zombies only say things that they've said.
Do a flip, Spider-Man.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong at all. I don't know if I'm there with you yet, and I'm curious to know what the line is for me whenever if it ever happens.
I think you'll know when it hits.
Yeah.
I think that there's just an increasing amount. The more that there is content to reference in the MCU, there seems to be a greater drive to want to do so, and I just don't think we need to live in that space.
Yeah.
For something that they do know that the audience is watching these things more than once, that they're marathoning, that they're paying attention to the continuity of everything. And it's like, cool. That means that we don't need to do this as much. That means that they are with you. You can put new things into these ideas. I wanted different dialogue in the interaction between Black Widow and Hulk, not the exact same thing from Avengers.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
I was going to look and see if it's the same writer for every episode, and it looks like it's 2 writers for most of the episodes. So I think that's where you're gonna get that.
Well, I mean, and one of the thing is, the first season's locked. Like, whatever changes they decide to make will have to be in season 2.
Oh yeah, for sure. I know, and like that's why I'm saying like I'm prepared for the fact that that's probably going to come up, but like this is the episode that's really like making it. This has been a problem. This was a big problem with episode 1. It's one of the main reasons why we didn't like it, because it was so egregious in that episode. But this is something that has been consistently showing up, and it's really prominent here in What If. But I think it's an MCU problem overall. To want to repeat what they think is iconic dialogue, and I'll admit that some of it is, but not all of it. And try to like really get that nudge that you feel when you're watching it, of them going like, I know you know that, I know you know what that is, and I hate that vibe.
I'm not to be too negative. Like that again. That whole.
This is like my big detractor.
No,
from the
yeah.
episode.
Like that Hulk fight. Like the fact that Blonsky's not there. Like Blonsky could have fought Black Widow, and that would have been an awesome fight because it's a super soldier against Black Widow, and that's like the first time she'd have to deal with that.
Well, I mean, like we don't. Maybe Blonsky. Maybe not everything was 1-for-1.
No, I get, but that scene was boring to me because it's just soldier dudes fighting Black Widow. Like it's not.
Blonsky doesn't show up in that part of the scene. He shows up a little later.
A little bit later. It's the same scene.
I mean, but it's kind of like how Loki shows. It's for me, it's kind of like thinking like, well, Loki shows up towards the middle of the episode. Well, when would in Thor that have happened? Is Odin in his Odin sleep? He's got the Bifrost, so Odin has to be in his Odin sleep. So he knows that he just found out he's Jotun. He's not God. He's not Asgardian. So like it's kind of it does. You do kind of have to. And honestly, I think it's kind of fun figuring out when each moment diverges.
Well, I think the other thing is that the trick of the episode is that you're like, okay, so this is 1-for-1 with the movies until Tony dies. But we know that's not true by the end of the episode because the nexus point was hope.
Yeah.
Which means that while we are seeing things referenced from the movies, that doesn't mean the movies played out the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sure. I wanted to, unless there's more you wanted to bring up on that, we'll switch into a different subject.
Nope. That's my strongest. Like, boy, I hope that stops being a thing.
One of the things I thought was really fun is how heavily Samuel L. Jackson was in this episode. I thought he was really good. Yeah. And I thought he had a lot of fun, especially when he's Loki. And you can tell how much fun he's having when he's Loki. And there was a moment where I wasn't sure what was happening. I was like, he seems a little different, but I didn't quite catch it on until he did the flip. I was like, that's not Fury.
Hank Pym says, you're pretty spry for someone with the corner office.
Yeah. I was kind of just hoping that they were just acknowledging that the comic book Nick Fury is really awesome, and he's not a 70-year-old man, so he could be a super spy and do this stuff. But again, after a while, it's like, oh no, he's just being Yoda, so he has to be Loki.
But I do think the Loki bit is funny.
No, it is absolutely funny.
The many Furies.
Yeah,
poor unwound Hank Pym, like, what's happening?
When he's just like, I don't care about any of them. You're just like, whoa.
Yeah, it was fun.
I also think Michael Douglas was. I don't know if Michael Douglas has done voice work, but I thought he did a good job for most of his dialogue.
I didn't believe it was Michael Douglas until I saw the credits, because I thought it was. I mean, now that it is him, it's like, wow, this is actually, because when you hear Michael Douglas's voice, he's like, oh, that's definitely Michael Douglas.
I could tell it was him immediately.
Yeah, me too.
I guess I could tell.
He has a way of like, especially when he said Goldilocks, like that's only a way he would say that word.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say, Sparks?
It's a really tiny nitpick, but like I don't like that at the end when he's apprehended that he says you honor her. I feel like that's what Fury should have said to him, that the agents honor Hope, what she stood for. Because I don't like that Hank just kind of has that revelation in that moment, and he's like, oh, everything I did was wrong. I'm the baddie. And then like goes away defeated. And I'm like, it shouldn't have been that simple for having murdered the Avengers before this moment.
Yeah. There's something that I was kind of stalling before I brought up what I actually really want to talk about, which is what I like about What If episode 2 and 3 is how big it makes the MCU feel prior to when it got big in the narrative structure of the movies. In the second episode, T'Challa was always there in the universe, in the world, and then in the universe. And in this, Hank Pym, Hope, what was an Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., like all these people feel like living, breathing beings that are changed through different decisions and Crossbones. Yeah. And I think that's really cool that we're at a place right now where we can kind of like go back to Iron Man 1, which we haven't. The MCU has basically ignored Iron Man 2 for a long time. Going back to Iron Man 2 and be like, yeah, the whole time Hank Pym was there, and that makes sense, because if it's a living, breathing world, then he would be. And I think that's really cool that it just feels, it feels bigger, it feels more expansive, and we're just kind of at a place that I looking back, it kind of changes people's perspective.
Yeah, it's something, again, I always talk about in podcasts, like it's something that only time can give us.
Yeah,
like it's only like that a character 8 years into the universe can show up at the beginning of the universe in a different product. Like that's only something that a decade of products can give you. Like it's cool. That's why the MCU works so well.
Yeah, right. It's a lot like when you see Endgame and Redford came back, and showed up after the events of Avengers,
or like Jarvis, like for sure. A show that like not a lot of MCU people watched, like that character showed up again.
Yeah, and I think the Endgame is a really good example of the other time that I felt this way. But like the fact that we're revisiting these early moments again in different ways, even, but it still makes the MCU feel big, feel like a living, breathing universe. Feels organic, and I think that's a lot of fun.
I overall agree. Episodes 2 and 3 definitely make it feel that way. I do.
Episode 1 doesn't.
I think they do a good job. I do think this episode does a good job of being a what if story. I do like it. I think it's a solid choice. I loved trying to figure out who it was and learning it was Hank Pym. I thought was excellent decision making. I thought it was a really solid choice. I just wish that they would lean more into expanding on our perception of who these characters can be by allowing them to have interactions that. This is something episode 2 did well that we've never seen before. Like, I feel like I understand even more about Yondu with episode 2.
Yeah.
Without having that be the same Yondu or Thanos or T'Challa.
You heard that they were talking about on the Shang-Chi premiere that, when Chadwick Boseman read the script for What If, he worked hard with Ryan Coogler to bring more of what they did with What If, more of that character, not necessarily the plotline, more of that characterization to Black Panther 2. That devastated me, because I'm like, we actually learned more about the character. We learned more about who he was, and now we won't get to see where that could have gone in the sequel.
Yeah. But that's like, so in this episode, a good example of that is like Black Widow and Nick Fury. That relationship feels even better. And like, I've seen another side of it, even if it's not the same people, the same normal versions that we have. And that's why I think like that dialogue thing we were talking about before, that's why I think that's such a detriment, because I want more of those and less of when people interact, it's the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I don't know if I have too much more to say about this episode.
Nope. What if we conclude it?
Cool that Frank Grillo's Crossbones is super sexist. Yeah.
Hey, he's bad guy. Keep him bad.
The only reason she can land a punch is because nobody expects it.
And then he gets his butt kicked. So that's like,
no, he doesn't. He just goes to the back of the truck and sees everybody else beat. He's like, "Oh, come on!"
I did love that scene where Black Widow's like, "Really, get some tunes on." Okay, hold these. Yeah, sure. Wait, like the guard goes.
Sorry, I do appreciate that they're doing that they're getting actors back for just a minute of dialogue. Erskine. What the hell is that guy's name?
Stanley Tucci.
Stanley Tucci only had one line of dialogue that he re-recorded, and Frank Grillo only had one line of dialogue that he did that.
This is another situation where maybe this one actually was helped by the pandemic, because it's like, hey, what you doing?
Yeah.
You busy? No, you're not. Get in here.
Because I think that's really cool that they've committed to just like trying, like, getting back as many people as they can, even if it's not for a lot of dialogue, if it's not even a main character, even if it's just a side character. Like, yeah, you were in a movie, let's get you back.
Jamie Alexander is Sif in this one.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, she had like 2 lines. If 2 lines.
Yeah.
I I like the show. I'm glad the show. I'm glad the second episode.
I'm glad that this was not a deep downfall.
Yes.
Back towards episode 1 after episode 2.
It's not, but it's more.
It's a mild step. Look, 2 was a real good high. I did not expect it to match that high.
I just want them to just be as creative as possible.
Yes.
And just like it just feels like they have to be safe sometimes because they can't be crazy the entire time. I'm like, why not though? It's what if?
I think the Hank Pym decision was creative and cool and bold.
Yeah.
I won't say that the whole episode getting to that reveal was as creative, but I do think that was creative.
I agree.
And for that alone, I'm like, hey, like again, if this is the floor, I'm good.
It's a good floor.
Like this is a solid floor. I'd love for this to be the floor.
Yeah.
Like when episode 2 raised the bar, the super low bar that episode 1 set, it was like, damn, how can you top that? I mean, this one is obviously it's below the bar of episode 2, but still a really fun episode. It's like 1's here, 2's way up here, and then 3's like it's still good. I still had a good time, but to me in this episode, as long as the episodes keep delivering on the what if, I'm calling it like the what if promises. Like this is truly a what if. Like what if things are vastly different, not just episode 1. Like, but what if Sharon Carter was the captain and not Steve Rogers? And it's the same bloody movie or Peggy Carter was the thank you, Brandon, was the captain. Whereas with 2 and 3, it's vastly different. It takes the premises we know and actually changes it. It lives.
I don't even need them. Like 3's not vastly different. I don't even need them to be vastly different. I think that as long as we're not, I'm not talking about you. As long as we're not doing the movie again.
Yeah.
As long as we're not just doing the movie again with a different main character who goes to the same beats, I'm fine.
Yeah.
At that point, I just judge you on quality.
If every single episode, the rest of the season is like this episode, I will be disappointed because this was a good episode, but I know what they're capable of now, and they didn't want to try that again.
Can't imagine that every episode after this is going to be like this, but I know what you're saying.
Listen, man, we watched 3 Marvel shows. Like I cannot say anything about these shows anymore. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, and to be fair to Ryan's point, I'm not as cold in this episode as even like you guys are. I know you guys like this episode. I'm not saying you didn't, but like for me, episode 1 and 2 or episode 2 and 3. Jesus, episode 2 and 3. Can we just ignore 1?
Yeah,
I already have.
Episode 2 and 3 are for me.
Captain
They're pretty
Carter
close.
too?
They're pretty close together. I immensely enjoyed this episode, and I hope for at least as good as this one going forward.
That's good. I'm glad.
It's super funny that Nick Fury already had funeral coffin cloths with symbols for all the Avengers.
And they're all the symbols that are the Avengers.
Thor.
In the
Especially
Avengers
Thor.
Thor who just showed up and they're like, well, he was trying to grab that hammer. We should put that on his coffin.
And those are the exact symbols in the game. I think that's really funny. It's synergy at its
I think
best.
that's pretty great.
If there was like a stupid nitpick, I was gonna say it was gonna be the Thor banner over his coffin. That's
pretty funny.
Because even then, Hank Pym was saying like, "Yeah, you were recruiting him anyways." It's like, he's right. Might as well just give him a cloth.
One of the things that I meant to talk about with like how big the world feels is like, now that we know that Nick Fury has always had this pager, like we saw him go for it in this episode, and we saw him that he considered using it and then didn't until Loki took over Earth, which I thought was a fun a fun way to end the episode with like, he used the pager, but he also found Captain America, so now it's Captain Marvel and Captain America are starting the Avengers. I think that's kind of cool.
The captains.
The captains, yeah.
Yeah, hopefully we see more. I would like to see a follow-up episode. I know that the plans aren't to do follow-ups; they're kind of just having fun cliffhangers. But this is another episode I'd like to see a follow-up to.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still very positive episode 2 gets a follow-up, but I'm not as positive this one will.
Next episode, what if Doctor Strange became a bad boy?
Is it? Oh, good.
Yep.
Cool. Still waiting for that zombie one.
That's one of the last ones.
Yeah, it's either last or second to last, honestly.
You got the episode list is online. You guys can find it.
Oh, is it? Okay. I because the app that I use to keep track of my TV shows doesn't have it.
Well, they're not officially released, but we know what they all are.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't have anything else to add unless you guys.
We got to see your movie very soon, so we got to go.
Yeah. All right.
He's right.
So this is Fake Nerds Watch, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I guess we'll continue to kind of roll along episode by episode. If we decide to do next week, you'll know. So stay tuned for all of that. There's more Fake Nerds Watch going on at the same time. There's Star Trek Lower Decks, which I'm doing with Downright Annoyed and Just a Little Podcast. Episode 2 just came up at the time of this recording, and we're going to record episode 3 soon. So yes, stay tuned for that. There is a find that if you like this video and subscribe to this channel, and you can also check out our new special. If you like Marvel shows, guys, our good friend and unofficial fifth member of the podcast. Sorry, Ryan disappeared, so I created I forgot about him. Mike Matola talked to us on this series, Fake Nerds Watch, about the Marvel shows, the Disney Plus Marvel shows. We went through all of them: WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, Loki, and What If. That was a lot of fun. That's up now. Check that out. Mike's a great guy. He's always fun to have on the podcast. Hopefully we get more of him soon. And of course, there's more shows on this network, such as Basement Arcade, which we are recording new episodes as we speak. As you listen to this, whatever. Basement Arcade pause menu. There are a couple episodes in the pipeline for Basement Arcade pause menu coming up. Ben, do you want to say just brief words about what's coming up?
Howard Scott Warshaw.
So stay tuned for that. That'll be up soon. And of course, there is FakeNerd Book Club, which is currently, we're working on getting that back on the air. There is Animation Station, which the latest episode is still the Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom. New episodes will be recorded soon. And of course, I Have Conversation, my latest episode with Ben Magnet of the Fake Nerd Podcast. That guy is up now. You can check that out. That's audio only, so don't look for it on YouTube. It's audio. And then, of course, the Mothership Show, the Fake Nerd Podcast, which we are all a part of in the glorious tree that is the Fake Nerd Podcast branch. You can check out that episode is coming up. The episode that we're probably recording or have finished recording by the time you watch this is Candyman. We talked about the new sequel by Nia DaCosta. That is probably going to be up then, audio and video, and coming soon. Speaking of Marvel, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. There you go. All right, that's it. You can find all of that on this channel, wherever you listen to podcasts, all that. Fake Nerd Podcast on all social medias, fakenerdpodcast.com. We got a TeePublic, we got a Patreon with an exclusive shirt. And yeah, I'm at BT McClure on Instagram and Twitter. Ben?
I'm at BenMax27 on Instagram and Twitter.
Sparks?
You can find me hoping for less callbacks at Sparks Witty on Instagram and Twitter, SPARKZ Witty.
The ghost of Ryan Eliopoulos.
DJ Tony Snark all over the multiverse.
Make sure to like this video, subscribe to this channel. Until next time you see us, guys, stay fake nerds.
Hope! It's all about hope!